In investing, you talk about having conviction. And I think if you look up the word conviction in an investment dictionary, there should be a picture of Michael Saylor. I mean, he has not faltered one bit.
Welcome back to episode 3 of Briefly Creo, your source for the latest legal insights and trends in the crypto world. I'm Daegan, Senior Associate for Creo Legal, and I'm joined once again by Creo's founding director, David, and Creo consultant, Inoke, and for the first time, our Associate Director, Sandy. So welcome to the show. It's been a big week. There have been heaps of exciting activity and developments taking place, which we're super keen to discuss and break down. So here's a quick rundown, I guess, of the top 9 articles making headlines today. So 1, ASIC crypto case loss against Finder. 2, Craig Wright is not Satoshi, the High Court in the UK has ruled. 3, Visa and Mastercard could be key drivers for crypto in the year ahead. 4, Wyoming passes law granting DAOs legal status. 5, a new study stating crypto investors have lost more than $75 billion to pig butchering scams. 6, Coinbase accuses U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission of breaking the law in rejecting crypto. 7, IP infringement rife in NFT. 8, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy raising another $500 million to buy more Bitcoin. And lastly, El Salvador drops income tax for foreign investments and remittances. So let's get straight into it. Article 1, ASIC loses crypto case against Finder. The federal court has dismissed ASIC's claims against Finder.com regarding the Finder earned cryptocurrency offering, stating it did not require a financial services license, which is a big win against ASIC. This product was shut down before ASIC commenced its legal proceedings, and Finder stated they would not reintroduce it to the market. Sandy, would you want to expand on this and give some insights about the implications of this ruling?
Sure. Look, this is an interesting one because not very long ago, ASIC managed to win the case against Block Earner, which is another crypto staking platform that had a product which allowed customers to stake their cryptos on DeFi platforms. And in that case, it was a legally different argument, but they did win in the sense that the block earner product was regarded as a managed investment scheme, which then was a financial product which required Australian financial services license. In this case, however, although at first glance it looks like a similar product, it was a complete loss for ASIC. It was decided that the product was not a financial product and they did not need license to operate it. If you look deeper, though, I wouldn't get too excited because there is a very interesting specific issue that allowed Finder to get away with not needing a license effectively. So the way the product worked with Finder is that the customer first deposits Australian dollars with the platform, and then they purchase true AUD, TAUD for short. So what that is it's a type of stable coin that's pegged to the value of Australian dollars. So it is a cryptocurrency, but when you buy TAUD, the idea is you can always redeem it later on for $1 Australian dollar. So it's supposed to be a tethered sort of thing, not unlike USDT for USD. So you first buy TAUD, and then with that TAUD, you then stake it with Finder platform, and Finder then pays you a fixed interest. At the time, I believe it was 4%. They've taken it off the shelf, and the reason they said for doing that is because 4% is no longer competitive now that regular financial products with banks and whatnot can also return you that sort of return. That was a deal. It was a fixed interest product that was paid on true AUD, the cryptocurrency. The problem in this case is that ASIC decided to start a case against Finder alleging that it was offering a debenture product. So for it to be a debenture, there's one issue that they could not overcome, and that's the fact that the customer has to be contributing money. The big issue in this case was whether the customer has contributed Australian dollars or whether they have in fact contributed the TAUD cryptocurrency, which is not money. It's a cryptocurrency, and by law, at least at the moment, cryptocurrencies in Australia are regarded as assets, capital assets, and not money. The judge decided that in the end, although a customer deposits Australian dollars to the Finder platform, they use it to purchase the TAUD, and it is this TAUD token that they then give to Finder to receive then the 4% yield fixed income in TAUD. So there was not a contribution of money; it was a contribution of a token, and because of that, it was not regarded as debenture, and that was fatal for ASIC because everything else that they wanted to sue Finder for relied on this whole system being the debenture. It was decided that that was not the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they tried to go for this argument with block owner, they went for the managed investment scheme argument, but in this case, they didn't. It does come down to the terms and conditions and the actual circumstances. But it does seem like the fact that they had TAUD, which is a real asset, which the law recognizes, and customers received that and contributed that. Well, firstly, they received ownership of the TAUD and then contributed. That seemed to be where the whole argument fell down. You might call that a bit of a loophole, but I think the judge was correct in this case. And, ASIC, I'm not sure why they took this one as far as they did, but they're trying to make examples out of people at the moment to deter others from doing similar things.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of consistent as well with the approach they've adopted to cryptocurrency exchanges, in that, you can transfer one crypto token to another crypto token, but as soon as you convert it into fiat currency, there might be other licensing obligations that are required, because currently there's only that registration that's needed with Austrac. So in that respect, they have been quite consistent in their approach to applying the law to these issues. But having said that, and as you said, David, it does open up a potential loophole in that regard as well. And no doubt ASIC might try to close that loophole because they don't want this to be exploited. So it'll be interesting to see what comes.
Yeah, they've got an ability to appeal. So we'll have to wait and see whether they do that. They might just do that just to not be seen to be backing down on this, because there are certainly political and policy reasons for seeing this all the way through, and there might be further fireworks ahead.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't see how they can overcome this issue, though. Technical as it is, I think they do realize after this judgment that they have a significant issue, which I suspect they might have missed when they first started this proceeding. I think it'll be a real uphill battle. I'd be very surprised if they can get anywhere with the appeal, and that's going to be a main problem, because although they want to see it through, if they're almost certainly going to lose, that they also have a problem there, because it's just going to be even worse if they don't appeal and they lose and have to pay even more legal costs.
So stay tuned there. Article 2, Craig Wright is not Satoshi. So High Court UK rules. David, the saga is finally over, maybe?
Hopefully. Look, Craig Wright, he's a very determined person. He's been around and making noises like this for years and years. So while I do have some hope that maybe he might think twice before continuing to cause a ruckus, this is as conclusive as you can get, really, that what he's saying is not true. I don't think many people really believed that he was Satoshi Nakamoto anyway, but as we covered in an earlier episode, the consequences of him winning this case could have been quite significant for Bitcoin and crypto in general. So it's definitely a great win here, for the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, which sought to really stop him from taking personal control over the Bitcoin network, whether it was through applying for patents, claiming copyright, various other legal means that he was trying to, presumably for his own personal gain.
Yeah, I think determined is the politically correct way of saying he's deluded. Basically, it's good that this case has come to rest. Anyone in the cryptocurrency industry, any developer will see that you can quite easily log into Cleopatra, check out the certificate managers and the private keys. Those types of things can be exploited on the Bitcoin network, and that you can actually create and pretend that you have that you are Satoshi Nakamoto. So I can go into Cleopatra, type in "I'm Satoshi Nakamoto." It'll deploy code on the blockchain network that people can then go and access, look at it, and it looks like I'm actually okay, there's someone that's claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto. But if you then look at the evidence, and this is why the court threw that out immediately, is because it was overwhelmingly insufficient. They basically looked at everything that was submitted at the time. There was nothing of any substance. It was basically evidence to the effect that I've just made now, where you can have people coming in, amending documents, amending some of the code. Now, of course, the actual private and public keys that are specific to Satoshi Nakamoto's private wallet can't be accessed. And that's the big issue here. So even though he can claim to be Satoshi Nakamoto because he's backdated several code on Cleopatra or whatever software platform he's using, it's not going to take long for a developer to go in and sort of prove that he isn't. And then it's just a matter of explaining that to the judge. So no surprises there. I'm glad it's come to rest. We touched on this earlier on. It's sort of a bad look on the cryptocurrency industry. The fact that he's from Australia isn't good either.
Yeah, so there are a few. I mean, look, he's back in the corner now. From a litigation perspective, COPA started this in the UK because Craig Wright lives in the UK. So first of all, he's immediately, I guess, bound by this decision where he lives, unless he appeals. And he might, but I don't expect he'll win. Like, just based on what I've read so far, there's just a mountain of evidence of fraudulent documents against him, or at least inconsistencies if you don't say fraud. And it seems like the judge is also of the same view. He's got an excuse for everything, right? No, he'll say like he can't access Nakamoto's private keys because he smashed the hard drive or something. That was one of the arguments he gave, because he said that the identity should not be based on the private keys and whatnot. But like he has an excuse for everything. But at some point, when you have like 500 different inconsistencies, and each one of which he's got an excuse for, it's going to start looking pretty bad. And that's what it amounted to at the end of the day, I think. But now that we're here, if he appealed, I don't think he'll succeed. If this judgment sticks, the good thing about it is that there's in pretty much every common law jurisdiction, there are procedures as well for registering foreign judgments. So if it came down to it, like in Australia, you can then register this judgment, and then in Australia, so it becomes valid here as well. So if he tries to sue someone in Australia, we can say, well, look, we registered this judgment here from the UK. That judgment has already said that he's not Satoshi Nakamoto, so he's not entitled to say that he is. So he can't sue me based on the fact that he created Bitcoin. So no, he'll be pretty much, I think, blocked now from a legal perspective to do this kind of frivolous litigation, which is a very good thing, I think. And the other thing is he's also now in a pretty bad spot because Copa's talking about getting him for perjury and whatnot based on all the evidence he gave in the trial. And if that actually goes anywhere, I don't know, he might even do jail time. I wouldn't mind so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of telling that the judge, rather than waiting to deliver the written judgment, immediately delivered his conclusion. Because if there was no immediate conclusion, then Craig Wright presumably would be in the media talking about how he won the case. And yeah, I wouldn't want to see that.
Yeah, I should add here, for court cases, when there's going to be a long judgment, and these judgments can take months to write when it's a long one, it is common for judges to do that. They'll give the judgment they say would deliver reasons, at a later date. And that could be 3-6 months or more down the track, especially if it's long case. This one's like how long? It was like over a month-long trial or something. And a whole lot of evidence to go through. So I expect it to be many, many pages.
I'm going to jump over to Article 3. This is a Cointelegraph article titled Visa and Mastercard could be key drivers for crypto in the year ahead. So Visa and Mastercard, they are jumping into some crypto initiatives, which possibly could pave the way for wider adoption with crypto reward programs. Inoke, what's your thoughts here?
This is an exciting example of the cryptocurrency industry starting to mature. And now, of course, we've had the Crypto.com exchange partner with Visa several years ago. So that card's been available for a number of years now. But to see MasterCard sort of entering the space and have similar visions as well, I think is a testament to the maturing cryptocurrency industry that we're now going into. Now, it will hopefully increase mass adoption as well. There's nothing that puts a consumer off entering the cryptocurrency exchange like having to basically navigate so many different platforms to simply spend your cryptocurrency. So, for example, at the moment, if I want to buy crypto on SwiftX, I have to go onto SwiftX, purchase the specific cryptocurrency. I then have to convert it, if I want to use it as fiat, into AUD. I then have to transfer that to my bank account and then hope that the bank allows me to actually, complete the purchase, because as we've seen, there's been some debanking that's occurred over the years. So it's a very exciting movement in the space. If we can have one sort of DeFi platform enter into a partnership with either Visa or Mastercard, and have it so that, if I set up a MetaMask account and I've got my cryptocurrency sitting in there, I literally just take my card, which is used as a payment rails to these cryptocurrencies. I then go to any operator, retail business that is now accepting cryptocurrencies as a form of payment. I tap my card, and then, I'm trying to sort of look into the future. There's no user interface that allows for this, but when I tap my card, it can see which cryptocurrencies I have on that card, and it asks which cryptocurrencies do I want to spend. So do I want to spend my Ethereum? Do I want to spend my ADA, my Bitcoin? And the technology is already there. It's already been built out to allow for these transactions. We just need regulatory certainty, which we're starting to get. We also need legitimacy in the industry as well. The average person doesn't understand cryptocurrencies and still thinks it's being used primarily for money laundering, which of course it isn't. And so how does Visa and MasterCard enter the space with less friction? They do that by having regulatory bodies in place that are legitimizing the industry, letting businesses adopt these payment rails so that the average person can enter the space. I'm super excited with this news. It's been around for a while, but to see it starting to take light again is very exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, the article goes into the differences between the approaches of Visa and MasterCard. Visa have been much more innovative, directly partnering with different projects, whereas MasterCard have been sort of more conservative in their approach, tending to prefer, or at least indicate that they would prefer, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, things more linked to traditional finance. So it will be really cool to see how those two strategies play out. And, if Web3 expands considerably, then, Visa might come out on top.
Amazing. Article 4 I have. It's also a Cointelegraph article. Wyoming passes law granting DAOs legal status. So it's some big news out of Wyoming. They've just passed a law granting legal status to DAOs. This means decentralized autonomous organizations can now enter contracts, open bank accounts, and much more. David, what's the impact and your thoughts on this new legislation?
Yeah, look, it's a great development. Wyoming has a very long history in legal innovation. They were the first US state to recognize the limited liability company. Much more recently, they passed a law to implement the DAO LLC. But the DAO LLC was more or less just a company, whereas this new structure, referred to as the DUNA, the Decentralized Unincorporated Nonprofit Association. It's a bit of a mouthful, but DUNA sounds nice. This DUNA entity will definitely make it far easier for DAOs to firstly have some type of legitimacy, conduct business, open bank accounts, pay tax. So I think this is an amazing development, and this is also an opportunity for other countries to do similar things. They meaning Wyoming, can be the guinea pig, but I think you'll see a lot of projects who are set on that DAO path go and set up in Wyoming.
I'm interested in the more technical elements of how that will function, in the sense that the way DAOs usually work is, if it's a properly decentralized organization, what would happen is that you have a treasury that's also subject to the decentralized autonomy, being, everything that goes in and out of the treasury has to be subject to a vote, and the smart contract is supposed to be able to implement that voting results automatically without a person that's sort of controlling in between. That's how it will work. But then if DAOs can now own a bank account, I'm interested in how that would work. Like, I think the way technology currently works, somebody's still going to have authority to control that bank account, a bit like a director to a company. I wonder if that's, I'm just interested to see how that plays out, and whether then DAOs will be subject to the same kind of thing with bank account money anyway, in terms of, director fraud and things like that, where rogue employees might be able to run away with some of the DAO's funds.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. The law is designed so that its members, each DAO's members, are not legally liable for what the DAO does, which is an important point. We've had recently the Uki DAO case in a different state where the court held that the Uki DAO was a general partnership, which is catastrophic, really, for the DAO. It means that all the members are legally liable for everything that the DAO does, jointly and severally, and they're also responsible for any taxation and things like that. So having this new type of structure it's already far better. It will come with its challenges. I totally agree. And, whether banks will update their policies to really allow this to work well is a completely different question. I would hope that the banks in Wyoming would be a lot more accepting versus, the banks in Australia, which have in recent times shown that they're not that accepting at all of crypto-related businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see, if they could implement a policy, which, again, I think this would be awesome to see. But, if they had a policy, for example, where if you want to move the DAOs funds or do anything with the DAOs funds in the bank account, they're going to need to see an on-chain proof of the vote being approved or something like that. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's certainly a convergence between DeFi and TradFi to some respect as well, because as we know, DAOs are global. They're supposed to be decentralized, and you can have token holders anywhere in the world. But this type of proposed law basically will allow for companies to incorporate in Wyoming, whilst the token holders who want to participate in governance can be anywhere in the world. So they can have the certainty, at least, that if they're going to participate in this particular project, because there's a proposed regulatory environment that allows for whatever business they're intending to operate in, it basically will allow for token holders anywhere in the world to have confidence that if they're participating in a particular DAO, if it's incorporated in Wyoming, you can actually participate in the governance without having to worry too much about being sued, being caught under a general partnership.
Yeah, the name involves, it says it's a non-profit, but how the actual law is set out is the DUNAs and the UNAs, the Unincorporated Nonprofit Associations, which preceded the DUNA, they can participate in for-profit activities. And there is also an ability to pay reasonable compensation for services provided in its ecosystem. So this means that members who work in the DAO and progress the DAO's objectives can be compensated. Question is, what is reasonable compensation? In what form can that compensation take? I think all of those questions are unanswered at the moment, but we'll certainly see in the coming months, where those things land.
It's also interesting that they talk about allowing compensation to members and everything, but I don't actually know the answer to this question, but I assume that for this sort of work, you wouldn't need to identify each member of the DAO to register the DUNA. So I wonder how they're going to try and balance this idea of having a legal structure that allows members to be compensated, yet at the same time, the members are unknown. And they could be terrorists, right? They don't know who they are. Now, usually the governments are pretty sensitive about this kind of thing. So I'm wondering how they're going to balance that.
Next up, we have a MSN article. Crypto investors have lost more than 75 billion to pig butchering scams. So this is a study that's come out. Pig butchering crypto scams. A recent study shows that these scams have swiped a staggering 75 billion from investors. It's undoubtedly a very complex issue. David, what is pig butchering?
I've never heard that name before, but it's a fitting one because these scams are terrible, to say the least. They really take advantage of people who are vulnerable in a way. This opens up the discussion about, whether crypto really does make it easier for these crimes to occur. But there's no shortage of quick buck scams outside of crypto. So there's a point that was made in this article. I think it was someone from Tether saying that because Tether is one of the most popular stablecoins used in these scams, they are all trackable. So all the criminals could be found and caught. He's not wrong, but it is very unfortunate that these scams are occurring. I've personally known a couple of people who've been scammed in this way. I've had inquiries from other people through our firm coming to us, unfortunately, still believing that it was legitimate, but just wanting a lawyer to really look over it to make sure it was. And having to deliver this type of news, it doesn't really brighten my day. There's obviously a problem that needs to be solved here. Look, I think with increased regulation, increased anti-money laundering, KYC regulations, hopefully these types of scams will go down. But this type of criminal activity, it can't be reduced to zero. I mean, it's certainly not zero in the traditional world.
How difficult is it to get your money back? And like, are there things that I guess others can watch out for?
It's really, really difficult to get your money back. More or less impossible. Almost all of the scammers are overseas. So they would never target people in their own country. Typically, they are people who are targeted, people who have heard about crypto. They see other people making money or hear about other people making lots of money and they want to join in. They are people who are vulnerable in the sense that they will believe when someone messages them on WhatsApp or some other platform pretending that there's a great opportunity. Or even, I think the article said that one common tactic is to pretend that the initial message was a mistake to the wrong person and then saying, oh, actually, but do you want to get involved in this amazing opportunity? And it makes me sick to my stomach when I think about it. You know, all these people are losing, in many cases, their entire livelihoods, and their lives are ruined by these people. So the likelihood of recovery is very, very low, if not nil.
Yeah, I had a recent client that was victim to a pig butchering scam, and it was a very sophisticated operation. It was somebody online that he met through some trading forum or something. So she was hanging out the trading forums anyway, and they started getting to know each other. But it was a months-long process of gaining trust. So they would talk for a while, and then later on, she would introduce him to this platform. She explained some sort of strategy using leverage and whatnot to apparently make money. So she would get him to join the platform, and then she would show how she's making money on the platform. And then she would even transfer him some funds I can give you these funds right now to help you start the trade. You can just give me back later or something, just to help you get things started. Then she'll even transfer funds. But the catch is that platform is not real. It's real that it exists and it works, but it's actually controlled by the scammer. So all these trades and all the account balances showing up in his account, they're all basically just code on the website that's controlled by the scammers, right? But it's very convincing because the thing that people don't realize, so much of the crypto space with this kind of thing is open source. You can go on GitHub and then you can go and find an open source crypto derivatives trading platform right now, and you can deploy that and get it up and running within maybe an hour. If you know what you're doing, that's all it takes, right? It'll come with boilerplate templates and everything seems to work properly. And then within the space of a day or so, you can customize it a bit here and there. And then there you go. You have a platform that appears to work, but really in the back end with account transfers and whatnot, maybe you're just controlling it there and just faking all the balances. And that's what these scammers do. So he goes on this platform. You completely trust this person because she helped him with the trading, make some money, even apparently lent him money. So it was like $35,000 apparently to like give him this money to help him start his trades. So he completely trusted her. When they closed down the account, they said something about potential insider trading and whatnot. The platform apparently froze his account and said, to unlock it, you need to pay this extra money. He was paying the money and he didn't think it was going to be an issue. And then later on, it was apparently they said that they're actually prosecuting this lady that's supposed to be his friend in Hong Kong for insider trading, for other things like that. And because there's a link here, because she lent him money before, that's why his account is also frozen. So they're step by step trying to give him transfer another 10K, another 15K, another 20K. And he was doing it. He was like 50, 60K in. He was about to transfer another batch of 30K and I had to stop him and go, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure you're getting scammed here. Right? So, and it's very, very sophisticated. And you just have to be mindful of this kind of thing.
The one common thread that I have seen is it's always about, okay, you will get all of this money, but you just need to pay this bank fee, this release fee. It's all procedural fees that you have to pay. But the fees that they're asking for are in the thousands of dollars. I mean, what bank charges $30,000 to release money? I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, that's right. And look, at the end of the day, I think the crypto is just, because of the way it functions, it makes it maybe a bit easier to pull off this sort of scam versus if you're using actual bank accounts. So it's more a nature of its benefits that causes this to happen. It's not as if this is only used by scammers. But the fact that, you can do fast transfers without a third-party person in between, without banks being involved, it's basically directly peer-to-peer. And then you can maybe put it through some sort of mixer to lose a trail and then take the money out some other way. The fact that these methods are available maybe makes scammers want to use crypto more. And also the fact that crypto, it's always in the news about how somebody made so much money off crypto. So it's easy for a scammer to go, look, come do this crypto thing with me. We can make heaps of money, because they see that reporting in the news. People have done that. So these are the reasons why I think you see scammers use crypto. But it's more or less really because of the benefits of crypto that scammers are trying to take advantage of this and take advantage of, I guess, less sophisticated retail users.
Next up, we have Coinbase accuses the US SEC of breaking the law in rejecting crypto rulemaking. So Coinbase is accusing the US Securities and Exchange Commission of improper procedure in rejecting their petition for clear rules on digital assets. It's, again, a complex issue with implications for the future of crypto regulation. Inoke, what's happening here?
Yeah, I think this is yet another example of the SEC's, regulate by enforcement approach in the US. Now, I'm actually quite empathetic to cryptocurrency businesses in the US and the steps that are required for them to take to simply run a legitimate business, because they're applying what's called the Howey test in the United States to determine whether an investment contract exists at the time of an ICO. The cryptocurrency businesses that really have nothing to do with that process anymore. As we've seen in the Ripple case against the SEC, it was held that the actual tokens themselves weren't in and of themselves investment contracts, but the raising of funds at the time to create XRP, the cryptocurrency, may have been an investment contract. So all that does is it offshores legitimate cryptocurrency businesses at the entry phase of their cycle. If you're starting an ICO, you go and offshore that aspect in a jurisdiction that allows for that. But then every other part of the business, you can operate in the United States and you won't be caught under the financial services laws there. It's a bit of a difficult one for cryptocurrency businesses in the US, and a lot of them are actually asking to be regulated. Coinbase has for years now approached the SEC asking for certainty around what's required. In fact, I believe Coinbase were given some guidance on what's required to actually start their business up, but nothing in relation to the types of cryptocurrencies they can list on the exchange, whether or not those cryptocurrencies are a security. It'll certainly make the job of token issuers a lot easier if they could actually establish at the time of going to list their tokens on Coinbase whether they're securities or not, because then you can actually deal with it there and then, rather than list your token on Coinbase and then get served with a subpoena because you've breached some financial services laws. It's just another example of the difficult situation that a lot of cryptocurrency businesses face in the US. And, I hope there's radical change soon that happens.
For sure. I mean, Coinbase is, how can you get more legitimate than them? I mean, they are a listed company in the US. It's not two kids in a garage running some exchange, right? This is a listed entity. They have considerable investment backing them. They have government oversight into what they're doing. And yet the SEC are withholding basic guidance to allow them to conduct business. Their chief legal officer was saying that SEC owes the public an explanation. And I think he's correct. It's gone on a long time now. It is well overdue that the SEC comes out with some regulatory clarity on this.
Well, I do believe it's all completely intentional, in the sense that they just maintain the extremely anti-crypto stance, really, because I think they're well aware if they go ahead and create this regulatory framework for crypto, it also legitimizes crypto in the sense that now if you work within this framework, you're completely legal, in a sense even sanctioned by the SEC. That's a position that I think SEC is trying very hard to avoid right now, purely because of its stance on crypto.
It's difficult as well when it becomes political. And even if it isn't political, the perception that it is politicized is always a problem. The way that the SEC has conducted itself, it makes it look like it's politicized. And, it just leads to conspiracy thinking. What could be a legitimate and booming industry just ends up getting stifled and delayed unnecessarily.
Yeah, I think that's a That's a challenge in every country, but in the US, it is even more severe than what we have here. There is obviously a lot at stake. The SEC chair, Gary Gensler, he knows what he's talking about. He lectured in blockchain technology, so he really understands the subject matter. But obviously, he's gone to the dark side, so he's now touting their line. With the approval of the spot ETF, Bitcoin and more broadly crypto is gaining legitimacy in the world of finance. So I think it's a matter of time before we have regulatory clarity in the US and elsewhere.
Next up, IP infringement rife in NFTs, but new laws are not needed, according to a US government report. So this was from a Cointelegraph article as well. The US government has carried out a report on intellectual property infringement in the world of NFTs. So while piracy and infringement are rampant in NFT markets, the report concludes that current IP laws are sufficient and no new legislation is necessary. Sandy, do you agree with that?
Look, I think this reflects that what I was talking about before with SEC and the US government in general, just having the stance that if they create laws for the crypto space, then it will, in a sense, legitimize them, almost sanction them in the way they operate. But look, in this specific case, they may not be wrong, because I think there's a bit of confusion in terms of what NFT represents in terms of authentication, proof of ownership, this kind of thing. That's not really the same concept as IP ownership. For example, an artist who draws a painting might then sell it, but he still owns the IP, but the painting is owned by whoever now bought the painting. And that's very similar to how NFTs will work, in the sense that, you have all these NFTs created, and you might have this token there, the NFT token, that now tells you that you're the owner without any doubt. It's provable on chain, but that doesn't say anything about the IP, right? Like, the IP can still be owned by somebody else, the artist or whoever issued the NFT token as a company. That's a separate issue. Now, if somebody else then copies all of that and then creates a copycat NFT collection, it often is then the actual original token issuers that have the IP to sue. And that's happened, I think, in the case of cyberpunks. At the end of the day, when there was copycat cyberpunks being issued by somebody else, it was a studio that originally created the cyberpunks that sued them for IP infringement. It wouldn't be the individual owners that own the NFTs, because they don't own the underlying IP. And so in that sense, copyright infringement or whatever it is, that framework still functions quite independently from the NFT tech. The main issue you really face is how to enforce it. You technically, there's a smart contract there that's immutable. If you know who the creator is, maybe you can get to that person and issue them with an injunction or whatever it is that you got to go and fix it, take that down or whatever. But if you don't even know who created it and it's immutable, it's there on the blockchain, you can't really take it down. What can you even do about it? What has happened in the past is where you then go after maybe third-party NFT selling platforms like OpenSea, for example, is one of the biggest ones that allows people to trade NFTs on the secondhand market, I guess. So you can then, they have the IP policy. If you can prove that these guys are copying your collection, you can get them to take down that collection. You could even use a DMCA notice if it's a US-based one. So as long as OpenSea then decides to take it down, what you do is you remove a lot of visibility for the copycat collection. But you can never really actually remove it from the blockchain, because it's there, it's immutable. So that's really the main issue. I think the main difference is the enforcement, and that's not something you can necessarily address by changing the laws. The fact of the matter is, if it's on the blockchain and can't be taken down, no amount of law saying that you have to take it down is going to make a difference.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well, because there's a number of issues that have arisen with AI NFTs that are being created. So where the data set has pictures that are already in existence, and those pictures are then used to create another photograph or picture. What are the legal issues that arise there? Now, interestingly, the solution that's been proposed that I've heard about is using blockchain technology in the actual data set itself, so that you can track what data is actually being produced on chain. So, for example, if you decentralize artificial intelligence and you have a decentralized storage facility as well, and you input the data in that decentralized storage facility so that the original works can be found, you can actually track on chain whether or not the new item that's been created with AI has in fact been created using a picture that's already been in existence. So it's a proposed solution that's still at the very early stages. It touches on some of the AI legal issues that are starting to arise. And again, it's another example of how do you allow a revolutionary technology to establish itself without creating a lot of red tape that'll stifle innovation. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really interested in the NFT issues that are produced by AI.
Yeah, interesting. This is maybe slightly off topic, but on the topic of AI and copyright, interestingly, there's never been an issue with like a person looking at a bunch of photos or artwork or whatever it is and deciding to create their own content using those photos as an inspiration for the style, for example. But the problem with AI is it's almost cheating in the sense that it can look at so many thousands of data at once and process it all together. Also, the technical point of for an AI to do this, they need to keep a copy of the product, right? So they need to actually have a copy of the data somewhere and then process it. And then if they then use that for commercial gain, often when you look at exceptions for fair use or something, fair dealing in Australia, as they call it, when you start using it for commercial gain, you're probably going beyond any fair dealing defense. Whereas for a person who's doing this, they haven't copied the painting. Maybe they're looking at a legitimate version of the painting, for example, and they just looked at it and decided that, okay, I'm going to draw something in a similar style inspired by that, and it's my original creation. There's no problem. There's no copyright infringement. But for AI, it's a different ballgame. Even though the AI technically may be doing something that human would otherwise be doing, but just on a bigger scale. So that's an interesting point as well for as far as how IP would apply to AI.
Yeah, and just looking more broadly at the question of, do we need legal reform to deal with these new technologies? Some people jump straight to, yes, we need, specific tailored legislation for crypto or NFTs or what have you. But I tend to prefer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. And this is kind of refreshing, just to see that they've said what we have now is totally fine. There are practical challenges that need to be overcome, but the legal frameworks are there and they are suitable for dealing with these issues. There'll be a lot of court cases, there'll be a lot of commercial challenges in the future, but that doesn't mean we need to overhaul the legal system, whether it's for NFTs, IP, AI, or the like.
I agree. My biggest concern when it comes to regulation is really where it impacts the consumer in a negative way. So I'm less interested in regulating the technology just for the sake of preventing like an arbitrary copyright infringement claim. I'm more concerned with, are there any privacy issues here that we need to be concerned about? As we know, with a lot of the tech companies, they were operating in the space for almost a decade before any big privacy issues were sort of recognized. And the extent to which those privacy issues impact consumers aren't fully known yet. So there are some protections that are required there. That's really where I think we need to regulate if we do regulate these technologies. It's how does it affect the consumer? Does it affect anything that can potentially infringe on their human rights, for example? There's some interesting issues that come from freedom to think. If you've got algorithms that can basically predict everything that you do based on your internet search history, do we need something there that prevents some of that?
Next up, Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy raising another $500 million to buy more Bitcoin. This is from CoinDesk. So MicroStrategy, they're now focusing on Bitcoin. Their aims to raise $500 million through a debt offering to buy more Bitcoin. This follows the recent was an $800 million raise used to acquire 12,000 Bitcoins. David, what is Michael Saylor's plan here?
Well, look, in investing, you talk about having conviction. And I think if you look up the word conviction in an investment dictionary, there should be a picture of Michael Saylor. I mean, he has not faltered one bit since the very beginning. You really have to respect him for that. He consistently uses the good performance in the markets to raise more money. Who knows how that plays out in the end? He seems very sure of himself. I've heard him speak at a conference through video link. He's a very well-spoken person. He has very convincing arguments. It will be just something we have to wait and see. One question that I've been thinking about, though, is with the approval of the Bitcoin spot ETF in the US recently, I just wonder how this impacts MicroStrategy's strategy of being a repository for Bitcoin. Before the approval of the spot ETF, MicroStrategy was really the main way that institutions could get indirect exposure to Bitcoin by buying shares in MicroStrategy. But now they can buy the ETF. So I think it was in this article, maybe another one, where MicroStrategy is now calling itself a Bitcoin development company. Yeah. So it seems like they're pivoting slightly to be more of a service type entity, but we'll have to see how that all plays out.
And lastly, El Salvador drops income tax for foreign investments and remittances. This is a Cointelegraph article as well. El Salvador has made a huge move, dropping income tax on foreign investments and remittances, reducing the rate from 30% to 0%. So this is, I guess, another radical change for the country's tax code. Inoke, what are the implications of these changes, and how are they impacting El Salvador's economy?
So just before I go into that, I just want to note that the global remittance economy is over $48 billion, and that's in USD as well. Now, what are the impacts, the positive impacts? I think it harks back to the true vision of Bitcoin, which is effectively to allow people to transfer funds seamlessly and with little friction. What I love about Bukele's strategy here is that he's been consistent with that approach. If you look at, his time, say what you want about his politics, but he's been quite consistent with the idea of reducing crime in El Salvador and allowing the economy to basically grow and for it to become a significant crypto hub in the world. The reduced rate to 0%, I think, is fantastic. Myself, being of Tongan heritage, I understand what it's like to send money back. If you're sending $100 back to your family in the islands or in El Salvador, you don't want 30% of that to go to the government in a transaction that was effectively cost $0. So it's sort of just a recognition of the fact that this is simply technology that allows simple money processing around the world. I think this is great news from Nayib Bukele. I'm hoping that more countries look at this, especially with something like Bitcoin, which is really quite legitimate. If you're using it for remittances, payments, and things like that, reducing the tax so that when you receive and send money for remittance purposes, you shouldn't be charged a tax for that.
Yeah, look, his work in his country, the numbers speak for themselves. They're saying in 2019, when he got first elected, the GDP of the country was 24.9 billion. 3 years later, it was 32.4 billion, which is quite a jump. There's a much broader discussion about how he's doing what he's doing. But on paper, the economy is doing well. I think we will see other nations start to embrace Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies moving forward. The speed of that is unknown. But I think for smaller nations that either have issues, with trade, have a really poor national currency or other issues, using cryptocurrency could actually be a way to circumvent some of those problems.
My brother was actually flown out to El Salvador by the president and got to go meet with him, right, and learn about, I guess, the economy and what Bitcoin was doing for it. And I just remember my brother was absolutely blown away and impressed with everything that had gone on in the last few years. It was pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I mean, they have a Bitcoin mining facility powered by a volcano. That is the coolest thing ever.
Unreal.
Just to see the change as well to the, just the perception of El Salvador has been phenomenal over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still obviously some difficulties with the economy and other things as well. But I've never ever heard the country being known for surfing, and now there are cafes there that are opening up, and people are being told to go to El Salvador for surfing, and there's all these Bitcoin hubs and businesses that are accepting it. So it's completely transformed the narrative of the country and the perception of the country as well, which I think is absolutely fantastic. They're sort of providing some guidance, I guess, to emerging technologies that are looking to change their global footprint in that regard.
Well, I think that wraps up today's episode, the top articles of the week. If you enjoyed or learned anything from us today, please do like, follow, subscribe, share. Any comments as well, any feedback is most appreciated. We have a couple awesome guests lined up in the near future, so do stay tuned for that as well. Until next time, thank you for listening.